也出现
主张弥沙宾信念代表国的上界行动的国主根
南大仙拉结巴修一堂古如真那面的马达亚米哦呀da你吧在这里清朝是吧？那也没得把你穷啊，让经济这么大的，都穷啊的了。你话没得我多见贵人呢，没把他玩的意思，是吧？看的没得多见面，我贵了原来你贵人呢吧没把原来他们家没得名是在地里下啊，看的没得把多见啊明星是。还得没大多少没生，我贵了，你对南面原来没大把的，我贵了调节的对南面原来你我贵了让些那话，让些今那话没把他是，让些今那话没把他是，还得没大多少没，我贵了原来你是哟，让些今那话没嘛的人，调节没大把推滚都吃不起是。就看是原来呢，对娘原来呢，我过来让些今年没把他是，让些今年我专把给没大把推滚都吃不起来。原来我看见没大把明白，没大把马英把高兴。马英把没大把明白。아니 가시 따버려 주었다. 미다고 또 주신 아니 내가 하시지 또 다 댐비칠 세대 다르서 꿀은 내가 매번 야나 탐제 미다민.
Next is a showing that there would be an absurd consequences that if impermanence was more powerful, then it couldn't exist at any time, or one could say also that duration couldn't exist as well. And then that's given in verse 272. If impermanence is not weaker and is present in all things, none of them will have duration, or not at all, or not all are impermanent. If impermanence is not weaker and is present in functional things at all times, it follows that all functional things do not have intrinsic or inherent duration, for impermanence which overrides it is always present. Alternatively, if not all things are impermanent, it follows that those which are not permanent, because impermanence is weaker and duration has inherent strength. No. What is?
Oh yeah. 또 지나가 다치 치미다 바타와텔라. 가데 다도 미다니 연나 다도 내에 미 연나 다바르 주세나 치나 미다 주로 미다 바주로스 미다 베천시 다품바다고 미다 베천시 뒤제당 현직도 좀 아니 뒤치 중화의 sen시나 미다 베천시 뒤제당 현직 중화의 뒤치 중화의 가데 sen시 sen이란 민주의大对没大把元呐，山西的参议人没住吧，参议没大把了没住吧，大对没大把元呐，那晚上星期要把明白他，那晚上星期要把明白他了，是个是原来大对那个明显，然而大把出现呢，七没大把居住，写在了，原来大把出现呢，7年没大把居住，提醒都。뒤니와 내나 따바를 주베 뒤니와 미지바 내나 따바를 주베 오직 따바당 미다바 니가 주나니 틀린 미리서
Next shows that if it is more powerful, then it would obtain that previously something would be permanent and then later it would become impermanent. And that's unacceptable also. And that's given in verse 273 where it says, furthermore, does impermanence arise together with the created things, products, it says here, created things it characterizes, or does it arise later? And then the verse says, if there is always impermanence, there cannot always be duration, or else that which was permanent later becomes impermanent. If there is always impermanence, because that which is characterized and its characteristic are inevitably concomitant. So here the relationship is, for example, a pot is an example of a created thing, and impermanence is its characteristic. The thing which is characterized or serves as a basis for the characteristic or defining characteristic is, for example, a pot, a created thing, and then the impermanence is the characteristic or identifying character of the thing. That if those are because they're inevitably concomitant, they're always present at the same time, it follows that duration is not intrinsically or inherently existent. Alternatively, having been permanent, a thing would later become impermanent, and if it remained for a second moment, it would be permanent. Yet one thing cannot be both permanent and impermanent.
내와 가바니 가데 내와 미다다 현진 오벌라여나 미다 로바 교와 뭐 야나 내와 좀바 주루시 아니 뒤제지 천이남 편지 마주에 편지 마주에 가데 오데비 내와 온데비 내와 미디비 미다바다 온데비 내와 미디비 미다바다 현진 오벌라 나지도 여바开了나 다주도에나서 가서 가데나와 미다다 현진 오버 라요나 미드요 가서 아니 현진 오버 다주도 여바开了나 오 미다바 임바 로바 좋암 양나 라신지나와 주버 주어레스 오 라신지나와 주버 주비시로 뒤제 주버라 대인 현지도 나와 현지도 내와 랑공 오된루라 신디도 도와미시죠. 현지도 내와데 준발라 뒤제 오고 현지도 내와데 그래서 랑공 오된루이나 아니 신디도 도와미시.
So next comes a rejection of the idea that these things exist simultaneously, that duration and impermanence could coexist at the same time, and that's given in verse 274, where it says, if things have duration and impermanence together, either it is wrong that things are impermanent, or duration is a fallacy, is false. The characteristics of created things are concomitant with one another. Thus, if one accepts that the duration of a thing's existence and the impermanence of its existence are simultaneously of one nature with the thing, either it is wrong that things are impermanent, or else inherent or intrinsic duration is a fallacy. These two can exist together in, here she has false products or created things which are fictitious or false, which do not exist as they appear. The gloss on that, which it makes sense of it. That is, it's that these things which are, if one understands that created things are in a sense fictitious and that they don't exist in the way they appear, then duration and impermanence can coexist within them, but they cannot have a common locus in real functional things, real things.
Oh yeah, that didn't cause you are there to do check about data. Tossing or Minaji, Lion Semgi mean tenor, Chamba Sheja Loba, you tell a loba corner chungs. That Kadi 2 year day. I think you do Chevy, do David Danjan, David Danjan, David to you with Shedham. I think I did 10 mena, do David Danjan, David 2 mena. Da David Tuna did with Juros, and da David Tuna did with Juroniado, and the Tabaki of Miss Jure, Sena, Juro Sena. And then, you didn't do you with Juchetella. And then you must say that meadows. Tambani, 아니 양손녀에 태어나면 봐이라 미봐이라 나를 통선비 오버 라양 치 메나싱스요 통선 오버 메나싱 세세 잠바니 양손녀에 태어나면 봐이라 나를 통선비 오버 라양 치 메나싱 라양 교왕이 태어나 라양 교왕이 태어나 미비 셈교와야 미양세 이제 가서 라 섬게 되면 민태나 민야 다다비 유 통원냐도 롬비 참바께 왔잖아 다다비 유 통원냐뭐기 아니 롬바게 참바께 왔잖아 참바写下 와디 유 미주다고 지시 로바이 태나 아니 요새 참바 출신 로바 코나 중화 인지 고자 대외 유전기 전부 던진 저와 중화 세와 민심 라루랑 내가开량 거서 대외 유전기 전부开량 거래서
Next comes showing how the evidence or proof that they adduce, that the realists adduce for the recollection of past things is negated, and that's given in verse 275. So the realists assert time exists because there is past time depending on past products, things that are created in the past. If that were not so, it would be impossible to remember past rebirths, thinking that one was this or that in the past. One would think, I was this or that in the past. And then the reply to that is, this proof of time's being real, time being real in the sense that the opponent here holds it to be, is also without the slightest substance. Memory focuses on an object which one has experienced, meaning in the past. And so the reply in the verse is given, things seen do not reappear, nor does awareness arise again. Thus, memory is in fact deceived with regard to a deceptive object. Though things seen previously do not reappear later, and though awareness, observing objects belonging to a past rebirth, does not occur again, memory arises with a sense of seeing, as one as if one was seeing present objects, with a sort of like as an assumption, as if one is seeing a present object. Memory, which is in fact mistaken and deceived, arises in relation to a so-called remembered object, which is false and deceptive, like an optical illusion. However, we do not deny that memory focusing on past objects arises dependently, as a dependent origination. This is certainly accepted in our system.
Oh yeah, that is Ralulang wa Kailan by Dirmewa, Gina Gaji Josu Mashebe, Tabitan Tisun Mas. Sugar Mujuda was Shejana, Tizusi Bisura Kawa Chas. That Jews and the castle of Pumbata was around to be Gajinua Minajang, and a Pumbi. 아니 가진이 이번에 로스 제일 요한이 나시 전에 이번 나시 인상 유나까지 요 조좀 마시 봐 아니 유요와 인상 아니 까지만 봐 메시 봐 그랑 두디까지 이만 메대 봐 임바도 좀 마셔 봐그 유요와 인상 아니 유나까지 보니 추디 유예배 뉘랑 두디 까지니와 판전에 여와 인상 아니 분박까지만 좀 해봐 랑 두디 까지니와 좀 메대봐도 좀 메셔 봐 오다 유나까지 좀 마셔배 아니 다비티 유니 아니 랑주 까지니와 판전에 여와 인상 아니 다비티당 아니 뒤숨 자에도 마와다당在马秋根米主大部写前呢是秋根，而且他让些去做那样，让些去马主把米主大部写完了前呢，而且提升数，而且提升水平，出来开发差是，提升叫做我们告诉你。提升叫做去出了，而且开发效果的是就是的呀。
Then here there's a concluding summation verse, which says, not knowing how to establish or posit continuity, and she has transitoriness or momentariness. They say time is permanent, some say that, and the three times exist as substantially. Having understood that phenomena are like optical illusions, learn how the three times she has perceived, it just literally says seen, how the three times are seen. So here then the first point, continuity or a continuum of things. To illustrate that, when we have something like a pot, the pot is momentary. It's a created phenomenon and thus is momentary. It doesn't endure into a second moment. Once it's produced, it doesn't endure for a second moment, but it arises and disintegrates moment to moment. And so nevertheless, we say that the prior moment of the pot served as the cause for the arising of the subsequent moment of the pot. And that's something that can be established completely coherently through proper reasoning, and thus we can establish the continuity of the pot, even though the pot is momentary. But other philosophers that don't follow this form of this reasoning of dependent origination and so forth, they're not able to establish both continuity and momentariness together at the same time. And so by not understanding that, they posit that, for example, that time is permanent, or some others would say that time, that the three times, past, present, and future, are substantially existent, and they say that. But those views are wrong. They can't be established correctly because of their misunderstanding of dependent origination. And so here, having understood that all phenomena are like optical illusions, one should become skilled or educated in the way in which one ought to see the three times, or here the way the three times are seen. It's using an honorific, so it could refer to the Buddha here.
Oh yeah, that is Louis Sujaba or Louis Santo Chambalaji. She didn't number the worship in the street. Gaba Combat of the show, Chuchibachi, that of the Junior Batella. Sumatawa Chawa Dendo Kabala, Louis Shunshaba, Louis Santo Shaba. That Shunshaba Sumche. The Tambo de la Annie. 确定了几天爬进没就不去被军山堂这个的了，安尼确定了几天爬进没就被军山的了样西，然后年报被成绩的就往这个，这是有个的的，他们年报被成绩的，年报高啊的了，年报被成绩的，成绩马上被年没的，这把帮我送起来，但年报被成绩的一般的。
So now then, the next comes then the title of the chapter, which is given in the text, and so this is a rejection of real time. And then the next chapter, or exposition, the 12th exposition or chapter, is here demonstrating the properties of the rejection of wrong views, views in general, but here the implication is wrong views, erroneous views. So this has multiple subdivisions. There's the basic topic is the rejection of things which are to be viewed as real, the objects of these wrong views being real, and that has the exposition of the text itself of the chapter and then the title of the chapter. First of these has, again, multiple subdivisions. The question of the reason why for the most case, worldly persons don't engage with this dharma, the dharma that's taught here. They don't engage with it. They don't enter into it or practice it. And that has multiple subdivisions. The first is one of the reasons is that becoming endowed or gaining the qualities or characteristics of someone to hear this is rare. It's difficult to obtain them, and so that has three subdivisions. The characteristics of someone who should listen to this, and that's what comes first.
다들 연법이 천이 시작하더라. 연법이 천이 순회론대 되니까 연법내제 차와셔. 뭐 연대 남신도 민주 연법 나와 미세대. 나로스 분내와 서야지 대신별로 네 도체다. 뭐 이제 된지 이제 나야 다 계지 다음에 반디 체체제와 아니 가서래 땡라스 계지 다음에 반디 체사와 제와 땡라스 대신시바야디 투수 추바보당 넘바보이나 대신시바데 아니 다음에 베네루 투수 추바당 다음에 베네루 아니 시다와치도 넘바보이나 지지 아니 최대라 지단 파질 아니 가서래 미죽세나 아니 천년라 미죽제나 최대니 잡아보당 최체바보당 최위당이 아니 최가와시 이양 아니 최가와시 이양 년바비 최위당이 신도네 가와차위 최위당이 신도네 녀바가오래 년바보다 천이던 년바기 최대다다 년바비 천이던 년바시 신도네 녀바가가 치로 다 천이 시다보지 당대바 고여했으나 아니 순년론전 전쟁에 년문내지 차와셔야되다 니들 라나 차바당 아니 현조라 잡지 초와기 차위 아니 로스분에 맞고 그래 란조라 차바다 현조라 당와다 차위 다 차당다 차위로 아니 초스모로 바스분에 맞고 그래 네 렌렌이 오마니베나서 로벨렌데 지금 오마니베라 초스롱에 이동에 시원나야 또 민주로스 로 안에 가서래 가서 초스롱아 수분에와 뭐 초스롱하기 이동화되기 아니 시원나야 또 민주로 시와 따르 수부르 메나로 수부르 마이나 현지 연대 인비 현지 인비 두시기 아니 리셰 이나야 리셰도 또고 말 메도베 치당 리셰다 예셰 제바그 아니 로단다 바지 고그레서 로수분나와당 디가라 아니 레예집이 셰로다 바지 고그레서 리셰 예셰 제바 로단다 바지 고데 로수분나와당 레예집이 셰라메나 테메나 리셰다나 예셰 심셰
So next comes the characteristics of a listener, someone to hear this kind of instruction, and then the introduction to this is, even though you have explained selflessness very clearly and extensively, and the Tathagata fully understood and gave instruction on it, why do most people not enter into, it says here, or follow this teaching? That's okay too. Answer, although the one who formulated it and those who elucidate it, who instruct in it or teach it, may be the perfect embodiment of greatness. A listener with the great qualities is extremely hard to find, or it's rare to encounter someone who listens to this who has all of the necessary good qualities. And then the question arises, what qualities does one need? The answer is in the verse 276. An unprejudiced, intelligent, and interested listener is called a vessel. That's the first two lines of this. And so then the commentary elaborates on that. Here, she's translated that as interested. One could say that's not wrong, but one could translate that as so enthusiastically seeking it or striving in it a little bit stronger, maybe. And then, so one should be unprejudiced, without attachment to one's own position or aversion to others' position. And then here, the two lines from it's called the Heart of the Middle Way by Master Bhaviveka, says, one will never know peace while prejudice afflicts the mind. That's a quotation from his text. If one is not unprejudiced, one will fail to understand a good explanation because of thinking it is someone else's. Just because it belongs to someone else, and if one's prejudiced, then one won't be able to accept that, even if it is a good explanation that's been properly explained. One must, and then on top of that, one must have the intelligence to distinguish between good and bad explanations. Otherwise, one may reject correct explanations and adopt incorrect ones.
Oh, yeah. That didn't let you turn to you. And it turn you chamber you go good. Turn you chamber the manner, and it remain men on Chinese. And it didn't come out. Didn't miss over zero. And turn you mean, and it let you. Lord John's last of that to teach it to do some commodities. Children, Chemawala, Kuada, Yidaba, Teganda, Chedang, Kang, and Yanji Chedang, Chedi Dembaba, Chemawala, Kuada, Yidaba, Ani, Senyadan Dembagi, and Yambo Day, and a church in Shawa chair, Sunel, Losuno, Lodred and Demba, Lesha Tundu Yawa. And a church Shemawala, Kuada, Yidaba, the Senyadan Dembagi, Ani, or Yamba body, and a church in Shawa chair.
Then, in addition to that, so here one has to have the ability to distinguish between good and bad explanations. Again, because if one doesn't, one might reject the correct explanations and adopt incorrect explanations. And then she has a keen interest or strong enthusiasm to get good explanations is needed. For without that, one will make no effort and simply be like the lifeless picture of a human, like a drawing of a human makes no effort. So one has to have enthusiasm to get the good explanations as well. And then one should appreciate. She has appreciate to hear its respect, and also appreciate's not wrong, but again, devotion is even appropriate for this. One should have devotion to the Dharma and the instructor in Dharma, Dharma teacher, and attentive to the teaching and the teacher. One has to have that devotion and attentiveness, focus on the teacher and the teaching and the Dharma teacher, both of those. And so then a listener that has these 5 qualities or characteristics is said to be a vessel for a recipient or a vessel for the teaching.
Oh, yeah. That didn't cancel it. You just send it, China. And a castle, more than that, I'm just mentioning what not like me said that. You just China, then more beyond than Sutavata, and then the Damba Girada, Sutavata. And or Sawata, and then you shout to say Sawata, and Majubata. And then Yamba be happy Sabo, or happy Sambadan, and this quantity Chiba, Yamba be Samba quantity Chibata. 아니 사실은 믿어봐. 스물 사실은 사실 매번 소 대래 아니 넘버 전도 된도 나와 민주가 세대 호텔에 민주 양반 나라 민 세대 넘버 전도 된도 나와 민주가 연대困难 나라 양보라야 연대 이진중 연대 진중으로 좋아 많이 연대야 아니 진중으로 좋아 많이 너
Then the remainder of that verse then says that if the vessel is equipped with those good qualities, neither the teachers nor the students' good qualities will be taken as faults or turn into faults. A listener with these 5 qualities is said to be a vessel for the teaching. Someone with all these attributes will recognize the teacher's good qualities and fully understand the clarity and orderliness of the teaching, as well as the good intentions of the listeners. The good intentions is superior intention, special interest in the teachings. The teachers lack, and then finally, the teacher's lack of self-interest and the like, the teacher not being concerned with their own welfare, and especially to material things, gifts and so forth, and the like will not be seen as faults and other than as they are, but only as virtues. Nor will the good qualities of the listeners be construed as faults.
Oh yeah, that 가서 내지 생년 맞아와 냠보보기 생년 맞아와 그녀와더라. 내지 생년 맞아와 냠보비 생년 맞아면 예민이 쓰다 시와이 탑단 대신 시송대 지대 용서 미셔다 되네 투베다 본 투베다 본 세고 다들라 마와보데 아니 기타바 연다다 담바 이양 년바비 천년 마사와 데 아니 랑기녀와 맞지바 랑기녀와 미제바 견연단당 연단 견도 지바 체대세 견연단다 연단 견도 지바 치대세 투베 세바 동안 녀월 체월 녀월 렘바 치비 풍보 과치제 시당 시대 투베 세바 동안 년이 풍보 사자 년이 풍보 아당 시비 탐 교육이 군주단바 안에 동아지 교육이 군주단바 시담 동아지 교육이 탑대 군주자가 제가라 시비 탑 교육이와 군주단바 탕 시당 시답 세제 시와이 탑 안에 동아녀와 시와기 예시 동아 방와라 동아 주바 군중 방와라 군중 방제 그 년부터라 안에 가르래서나 시와이 탐 안에 다 파나야라 게 파나야라 게긴 게그나 게소지 다 도어디 남대탕 남대탕 시당 시위 탑다 대신 시순데 세차가나 남대당 아니 남대 대신도 아니 남대 대라때네 아니 차와두지 동안 냐와라 시와 타바냥할 때와 순데 세 탑다 대신 시순데 타반데바 나라 파비 담바시 순장 다투섬 공부라 미즈미 지рем바라니 내지 천년 마사와 미셔와 대치다와 신도 아니 용서 미셔와 강인바 되니 투베 시도 마송바오 시 녀와데 투비다 보고 체대 사랑이 녀와 마사바 아니 정내내지 녀와다 보고 체대 대삼지지 덤바 넘바단 덤바 마이디 미롱기 마동와 님에게 멤버시노 롱하게 마동와 님에게 마임바시노.
Next comes the negative consequences of the if these characteristics of the listener are not completed, what occurs from that, and then the introduction of that says, although the teacher may be perfect, if the listeners lack the prerequisite qualities, they will not recognize their own faults, but will consider faults as virtues and virtues as faults. And then this is explained in verse 277. He explained, referring to Lord Buddha, explained existence and its faults, the means to peace and peace itself. What people do not understand, when the worldly beings don't fully understand this, then they see what the faults that they see are seen as the sages, the Lord Buddha's fault. So then the commentary continues. The sage taught that about worldly existence. Worldly existence is the form given in the verse referring to worldly existence in the form of the five contaminated and suffering aggregates. That's the principal connotation of worldly existence or existence. It's the five contaminated aggregates. And about the true source, origins of suffering, which are the cause of worldly existence. Then he taught true paths, which are the means to peace, including the Eightfold path of the Aryas, so that's the principal subject matter of the true path portion of the Four Noble Truths, and also taught about peace, meaning liberation, or another word for that here is nirvana. So he taught the Four Noble Truths for those who seek liberation, but ordinary worldly people, the world, who make no effort to hear, think, and meditate, are unaware that they do not possess all the qualities of a suitable vessel. Whatever they fail to understand correctly, they see as the sage's fault, saying he did not explain it correctly. It says here sufficient detail, but yeah, that's okay too. Saying he did not explain it precisely is probably a better way to translate that. He did not. Because of their own faults, they misunderstand the sage's teaching, and they attribute to him the fault of not precisely explaining things properly. However, merely that does not mean the teacher is to blame, Lord Buddha. A blind person's inability to see the sun is not the sun's fault.
Oh yeah, 나한테 랑제 파람지 주주에 파주기 침밥 안에 파람 예라 대라 양다비 가다 양다비 내지 타도 소와스타 요아 대상을 참 먹어서 도시 나들이 다 거래서 저나 다들 접어방한테 말해 무슨 뭐 접어방한테나 투바 근전도 투바탕 현지 담바 현지 담바 따나도 담바 담보 근전도 투바텔라양 누구지 수익이 담바니 담바라 가와서 봐 덤비 담바라 현라 타바메 비준전 대배선비 시도고 주지 되나나 와체비 탑 세간다 요간다 담보 누구 수익이 담바니 담바라 가와서 봐텔라 대화 어디에 어디 말하면라 탐자 단원 양을래 나와 예전 장군디 그수지라 대단히 내가 조치시 와 다지 좀 내지 온디 땀남니 온도 아니 가서래 사람 미 고만 두제기 토벌 제백에 땀니 어디 땀니니 최전사와 이나양 아니 내가 레베 땀 누구냐 내가 셔바게 내래 탈바 내가 레베 땀 탐제 라시메 봤던 바니 아니 랑경오 수익좀 발라주지 수익좀 발라주비 체리 어디 다 랑경오 라시메 봤던 바니 랑경오 수익좀 발라주 코자기 미도시 이구와 미자도 해나 야
So next comes an explanation of, here it's rebutting arguments that someone might pose to the previous statements, and that has multiple subdivisions, establishing that the sage here is an epithet for Muni, or sage is an epithet for Lord Buddha, Bhagavan Buddha, and so proving that the Lord Buddha is omniscient, and that has then follows by showing that other teachers are faulty. They have they don't teach correctly. They're faulty, and the first of this has multiple subdivisions, showing that it's appropriate to take delight in the instruction of emptiness, which uproots and eradicates suffering and the origin of suffering, and then there are other subdivisions that will come from this. And first of these is showing that it's appropriate to take delight in the instruction of emptiness, which functions to uproot or eradicate suffering and the origin of suffering. That's given in verse 278. Going back though, there's the Eightfold Path is given in the note if someone wishes to look at that in the to the translation, the Noble Arya Eightfold Path. So first, the first topic is given in 278, where it says, although the sage's discussion of high rebirth is extremely clear, we do not understand or approve of his discussion of definite goodness. Here it's like the definite good, meaning liberation, since the teaching that everything is without intrinsic existence refutes or rejects the very nature of things, that things existing in any way whatsoever. And then that's the view posed by the opponent there.
No, yeah. That they do la so good and your monji over Tanjala, Chabatave, Yangan, there water. Ani Tanjamba, Cherabala, so the Kelly, said the la Tamjatave, Yangan, Dawaya, Jangun de say, oh, they do la so good and your monji over Tanjala, Chabat, Ani Chabatambe, Yangan, Dawa. Rata or Yangan Doa, Tanjamba, Cherabala, so I am Tabakela by Yanzan, or Tabakela be a Janjo good by Yinas. Kanshi Dona, good and you on Sijimba. Diagon Unjuba Bangwatana, Jachana to get it out. Or Kanshi Dona, Numumba. We see Jimber Casa, the Pumbo Rangitani to a tomb at Tetanis. Or the Guzin Tetani, Migajua Chishi said, Oni, or Kashidona Kunan Yumon, but a sea Jimba, Casa da Pumbo Rangitani, or you to a tomb at Tetani Dana, Migawa Chua, and Juchishi. And a God resource, Migawa Jua, Juchishi Gawa resource.
Then, so then the reply to that or answer is given in the verse as well. These strange people all agree that by giving up everything one attains nirvana. For what reason do they then dislike that which puts an end to all, which eradicates all of it, meaning all of suffering and everything? And the verse there says, then these strange Samkhyas, Vaisheshikas, and the like, who believe in liberation, all agree that one attains nirvana by giving up attachment to everything associated with the mental afflictions, such as pleasure, pain, and so forth. And so here we have to understand that when it says that they believe in nirvana, what they're actually believing in is their notion is that through the temporary suppression of the manifest forms or expressions of the mental afflictions, then one achieves peace or nirvana. But they're not actually getting rid of the sources of the mental afflictions, but they're simply suppressing them temporarily. But why do they dislike it when the person and the aggregates are said to be empty of existing by means of their own character, having intrinsic existence or existing by means of their own intrinsic character? The understanding of this destroys all that is associated with the mental afflictions. Therefore, they should be glad.
Oh, yeah, that's the kind of Dora Yangan Della, China, me, did not come to that same me, oh, that did tend to want to shop on Nashi, did do last Baki, Annie, Numon or Tanjala Chapata, Yangan Della, Annie Della, China, me, say, Dig Casore, Casada Pumborashi to be tomb, but and never is Ani Tabachi about my ears. Did not come Teta Sham Mays, oh, the Tata. Did not come Teta Sham, Yada Major Toba Tan dancing. Teta Jena Duma Shimuju, Rangu Devata Tumbaki, Ani Castle, Tataba Yobata Mebatan. Ani or Teta Jabatella, Ani Tawatu Duanya was she when you see any shit Tokumare, say, Teta Jena Duma Shimuju, said the man at all.
The next is a quotation from Sutra, which is illustrating this point. It says, in Nirvana there are no phenomena. Whatever does not exist then never existed. The suffering of those with ideas of existence and non-existence who act accordingly, who behave in accordance with that, who practice in accordance with those wrong views, will not be pacified. So here, there are different ways we could read this, but one could say that in Nirvana there are no intrinsically existing phenomena. Nirvana or phenomena themselves are not intrinsically existing, and whatever does not exist then never existed, meaning they didn't exist intrinsically in the past and in the present or in the past. And the suffering of those with ideas of existence and non-existence, meaning real existence or real non-existence, some kind of intrinsically existing existence or intrinsically existing non-existence, these wrong views, those who act in accordance or practice, this is practice or act, behave in accordance with those will not be pacified. The suffering of them will not be pacified.
Oh yeah, 写生说，这可能你期间毛老板毛完呢，特别送马多，哦。아니 장체에서 주사자 마와 매배 사랑하랑 기도바 담지 아니 타바토바당 탈바당 아니 타바토제기 남잠만도 담바잠마도 나 주사자 마와 매배 투모마요 히시스 어디 된다와데 타바토베 탑 아니 가서래什么东巴你多比太困难你안데 대 아니 투모마요 비치스야 차오
So then the next line goes, with respect to the one who speaks of reality in a completely non-erroneous fashion, she has undistorted statements, but the speaker of reality, the one who teaches or talks about reality in a completely unmistaken fashion, that is only the teaching of the Buddha, the speech of the sage. Apart from that, the Samkhyas, etc., don't speak about this in any way whatsoever, and that is give any kind of undistorted or correct statements about reality. And that being the case, one should understand that the speech of the sage is unique in being the unique Dharma, the Dharma that is specific to the sage.
Oh yeah, that is it. Don't be done by the Shana, Taba maybe Dunzani. Don't be done by the Shana, Taba maybe Dunzani. Kashi don't Michete, Chishi don't watch Chabachu. Tenang about Tubai, Shendu Shiva Mercy soon. So that day, Tamja Tava Jimba. 李龙就他就当完了这个人是吧？上的这个呢，他们家单位两个人的话，现在讲归的话，一呢是他居住刚来送话，他们家单位两个人的，大陆两个人的话就，是要做那些钱的，他们家单位两个人的话，现在讲归的话一呢，俺你去到目的间呢，去把几月间呢，是哦，目的把也都给呢，目的把去把几月间呢。 台大呢，冬日上班咱们都写进设计是，开始了，冬日上班咱们都写设计，冬日他没写白，前边都前边是看了，刚是冬的没写白是啊，前边都前边，现在刚是靠冬日他。 靠动物头去他们家让西去动把米线把的机器动物吃吧去是哦，靠现在搞些，俺就靠动物吃吧了，可以就帮过人把了，可以就帮完了，俺就可以就帮这个他们写过一张，靠动物头去他们家让西去动把米线把的机器动物吃吧去是干了，俺去动的米线把机器动物吃吧去哦，呀。
So then next shows why it is that apart from the teaching of our teacher, the Lord Buddha, there's no method, there's no liberation. The reason for that is given in verse 279. And then a question is posed. If these strange people all agree that one attains nirvana by giving up everything, here giving up everything means, like in some systems, they cast away all of their possessions, the things that they utilize. They even give up their bodies in an erroneous fashion. If these strange people all agree that one attains nirvana by giving up everything, what difference is there between you and the Tirthakas? She's using the translation forwarders. I'm going back to the Sanskrit Tirthakas, non-Buddhist philosophers and practitioners of ancient India. Or in modern India too, some of them. Anyway, answer, they are different in that they merely have the wish to give up everything, but do not know how to do so. So they have the desire to give up everything, but they don't have the method for actually getting rid of it. And this refers to, they may have the wish to achieve nirvana, but they don't actually know what nirvana is, and they don't know what the method is. The method is getting rid of the basic cause of samsara, which is the mental afflictions. They don't have the method to do that. So the verse here then says, how will one who does not know the means to give it up do so? Certainly, therefore, the sage said, there is no peace in any other teaching. How can those who belonging to other systems give up samsara while they cling to the wrong methods? They do not know that the means to give it up is to understand that all phenomena are empty of intrinsic existence.
Oh yeah. 대난에와 투바이 현도 시와 메시 송스. 아니 다 가세. 샤바 주대 아직까지 된다리 탑라 치질로서 샤비시르스 자라 고통에 탑 최탐자라 라시기도 막 미셔바디 지시동 와지대 탑라 아니 치질로서 샤비시르스 어야 되네 대난에와 투바이 현도 시와 메시 송스가나 대난 내와 투바이 개정탕보니 디니토 니와다 순반이 디니토 시완이 디니토 두 바로 보마와니 바로 비마와니 개정 대다기 똥어스 다 개정 당보니 대만라도 와 내로 또 받아 자이나 아니 랑게 최디 받아 자이나 니와다 순반이 디니토 시완이 디니토 시 바로마와니 개정기 똥어스 개정 다기 똥어시 그래서 된딜라고 하네 송배 최디라 현도 최디발에 현도 안에 현도 치료와라 안에 시와 매체 순서
So thus these practitioners of these other systems, because they don't understand that all phenomena are empty of intrinsic existence, then they don't have the method to get rid of that which they wish to get rid of, samsara, and thus no method to achieve nirvana. And the reason for that is because they're attached to an erroneous method. They're attached because of their attachment to an erroneous method. Therefore, it is certainly with this in mind that the sage said, here Rutha's, the first practitioner of virtue has come about thus. I think that should be translated as, practitioners of virtue is an epithet for ascetics. Ascetics, first is this. Second and third is this. And fourth is this. So he's enumerating then the four Arya realities. So he enumerates them in that way, and others' doctrines lack such things. And he's again addressing the practitioners, these ascetics who are engaged in the practice. The others' tradition, that is the proponents of other systems are empty of having people who are actually engaged in the asceticism that would lead to this achievement. So on account of this, he said, there is no peace in any teaching other than this.
Oh yeah. 되게 진짜 되는다. 숨바 덤베 숨비 안시도 고주지 되는 거를 집에 탐니 선로 다지 과소래 롱을 때나 먹어야 돼. 그래서 시도 고주세 그 아니我都 그렇게 봤더니 그 보면 돼 봐. 아니 좀 내내 그 송진자의 생각 바꿔야 돼. 신도 고수지 거와. 대인자 신도 고주지는 나 집에 탐니 산재 지송 고주라. 산재의 순비 아니 고주라. 가시 태좀 제주와 제이 동반이 된대. 네 권에 이지차. 세다 되게 가르친 거래서나 아니 동반이당 대신 내로 숨발라 아니 가서래 리바당 가와매 봐. 참아 임바디 균전도钱네 아니 대마 임바게 아니 가서래 김발래 저거다 리를라서 왔다 두서 투성한 게 봐. 가대 탐제 켐바 이나 리를라서베 차라서 고주지 된담장 우리 시거나 리자오 리랍당 리시라서베 대치당 애니 시나 예수 바바라 되는 애니데 와 예수 바바라 되는 따라 되는 애니데 산제지 숨비 유당 아니다 뒤지 쳐박이 아니 될라주당 야시시당 안자他赶在出个显出忘记了是对了日住了所以旅记那一菜旅当俺那太大个菜在场这些都没那几天节菜说叫我了高头出了康熙送吧아니 점점 되지 대달 숨바디 여담 매도 태좀 깨워라 교하기 강사 대달기 아니 태좀 제비치도 나 점점 되지 쉬었다면 랑신이 주와 동반이 땡데 자체 탐제라 아니 랑신이 동장 자체 탐제 대비 내만지 내도가 시도 차신 또바가와남 기타 숨바라 대라 참아 인바의 균제의 관념 라 참아 인바데 어 대별라 관념 대별라 관념 아니 리릴라 소와 아니 좀 봤다와라 lonje 중화다 다 공도 셰베 리릴라 소와 대다 점단지 숨바텔라야 아니 참아 인바데 아니 냐바데 숨과 배체네 신도 고지지 된다만에 대권하다 내 인묘고네 니권하다 탐제 쳔베 이체바 자데那种至于他们家当车哇，如今弄了马店吧，日本人他给我钱呢，日本人他在太送吧了，他没有人把他给我钱呢，就是说新都过去几天，俺那等他干说，就把当完了说，弄去中华当，我他顶着我。零息了说话，给他拆了说话，太大，上节给送大了点呢，我瞧我是呀。
Now, then the question arises. Here, the next point is showing that the method by which we can ascertain that the teacher's teaching, the Lord Buddha's teaching, is how we can ascertain objects which are extremely obscure, extremely hidden or obscure objects within the teaching of the Buddha. How can we gain certainty about these things which are not accessible to perception or to inference? And that's given in introduced in verse 280. And so here the question is posed: if he is omniscient, he must have super knowledge of extremely hidden things, such as the size of Mount Meru and the continents. But how can one be sure of that? And then the answer to that is one can ascertain it with the help of inference. And then the verse here explains that. Whoever doubts what the Buddha said about that which is hidden should rely on emptiness and gain conviction in him alone. One might wonder whether what the Buddha has said is true or not regarding the size of the abodes, bodies, and lifespans of the 6 kinds of gods of the desire realm and so forth, from whom one is separated by time and space. So here these things are objects which for ordinary humans without some special super knowledge, the size of the world, the universe, the way in which it's structured, the forms of the inhabitants, beings that exist in other levels of the universe that are not accessible to our senses and that we can't establish through inference. How are we to know that what the Buddha has said about those things is reliable, and how can we gain certainty about those statements? And then regarding the size of the physical world and so on, all of these which are hidden to ordinary beings. To dispel such doubts, one should take as an example the fact that the features of the two realities, which are very subtle and difficult to understand, the teaching that all phenomena are empty of intrinsic existence, at the same time together with the feasibility of actions and agents, or that actions and agents can be demonstrated or demonstrable, are actually as he explained. So what this means then is that because things like the fact of dependent origination as well as the fact of emptiness, these two realities can be established through inference, then and because the four Arya realities, the Four Noble Truths, can be established through inference, then one is able to take them as evidence for his validity as a teacher, that he's an authoritative teacher. Understanding through this that the extremely hidden things or extremely obscure things are, again, things which are not accessible to ordinary people, to their perception, sense knowledge, or through inference, are just as he described. One should gain conviction that he alone, the Lord Buddha, is omniscient. Having ascertained that dependent origination, free from, she has fabricated extremes, I'd say conceptual elaborations, dependent origination free from conceptual elaborations, having determined that through correct reasoning that doesn't require, without relying upon scriptural citations as proof, meaning that when we can establish dependent origination free from these conceptual elaborations, we don't need to rely upon scripture, like the evidence of scripture, the statements of the Buddha for that. We can do that just through our own sense knowledge and inference. One should then ascertain that extremely hidden things that are stated by the Buddha, we can know about them through relying upon the Buddha's words as evidence for their truth, for their validity.
Oh yeah, I said that. 送给大人我瞧我去，既南下出来要是去下巴汤是，但是下送进那个就是国主，俺那看说的新都国主的。这些看了，新都国主的他，俺那看的是谁个？新都国主下送给台湾国主的，中山国主的，新都国主送给哪呢？新都国主的，俺那路线弄了在那包下的，俺那船上也是去送把那些钱的，是吧？哦，他说的，但是人家听我给弄句话，是吧？基本弄起听起的，随便当单是。我天这弄的缺钱，俺那让给单据出来了。 俺那没有话引把的，俺那龙开的带来九百一十三，结果送去大卫龙来带来九百一在，一些村里没有为积累结束800银是那么的干了，一些为抽给俺那接送大卫龙来带呢，俺那抽的龙的，俺那让个单队来没有吧，他包过来的是吧？对，一张天这个下巴的，结果送去他谁干了？俺那汤就准备吃了，50上面200没把汤。 安尼中山国酒店被下了，安尼我做结巴可没办，安尼新都国酒店被下了，已经弄个没办，所以我提这个，安尼结巴送去他被弄了，但呢，安尼新都国酒店被弄了。 弄得他，俺那让个等去谈了，没路啊，用不得，包队站吧，这个，俺那就看说的，别啦。 아니 대시 되게 숨게 산제 숨시노 제거래 다다단다 디나라 아니 다데 라시 주가 되게 동반이 담바 숨네 배차기도 와 대시 되게 산제 숨시노서 대시 되게 산제 그 숨데 아니 밀어봐 이봐 나신전에 빼라 아니 다 진발 담아라 되는 논지 중이 아니 농태라야 랑그 된들을 밀어봐 또 봐다 배티체네 아니 제숨다 밀어 되는 또 봐시 대략 शेजु데 아니 지 나자지 초란 여사 그 잡아다 집받체 아니 신다 시본은 자와 여도 다갑디니 아니 참매시 갑디니 참매시 나자래 된도 받쳐봐 이노 참매시 다바제 tanju와를 얘가나 아니 라종 무슨 파 비우야기 아명 무슨 이종 무슨 아니 나종 무슨 benyejaji 참매시 나샤바제이나 어떻게 또 받쳐봐 이노
So next, so regarding the general presentation of this, the explanations of Dignaga and his spiritual son, meaning Dharmakirti, are like those of the great trailblazers. Shingta Chimbolam. Shingta Chimbolam. Papa told me that. 초랑 yapse는 샤바다 신다 첨보남 다 여배 사다 누주당 다와이셔 누주당 파바라 되죠 지당 디소라 저당래 다와이서는 저그래라. So now then with regard to this the general presentation of this, then the explanations that are given by Dignaga and his spiritual son Dharmakirti, etc. Those explanations can be taken as being similar to those of the here it says great trailblazers, referring here to Master Nagarjuna and Aryadeva. So what this is referring to is that in the exposition of Master Dignaga and Dharmakirti in particular, we find the general explanation of the way we can know things, and particularly how we can know things through valid cognition. So to understand that, we have to understand that there are three levels of objects that are knowable. There are the things which are accessible to perception, that is phenomena that are we can know through our senses, sensible objects. Then there are other objects which are called slightly hidden or somewhat more obscure, which are only accessible through inference. That is, we can't see these things or touch them. We don't have any sensory knowledge of them, but nevertheless we can establish their existence securely through inference. And then on top of that, there are highly hidden objects or extremely obscure things which are not accessible to either perception or inference, and thus can only be understood through relying upon the statements of an authoritative person. And so then how is it that we establish the statements of someone as being authoritative? Well, here we're talking about the statements of the Buddha, and particularly with respect to these extremely hidden objects. And these statements of the Buddha about these extremely hidden or highly obscure objects, they're not things that we can evaluate through our sense perception. They're not things that we can establish securely through inference. And so we have to believe in them. So what is the basis for doing that? The way we do that is by establishing the authority of the person who is expressing these statements, in this case Lord Buddha. And Lord Buddha's statements on obscure things can be established as reliable, authoritative, because we can determine that the statements that he makes about obscure things are not contradicted by our sensory knowledge, the knowledge that we gain through our senses. They're not contradicted by any kind of inference, knowledge that we establish through inference. And they also are not, they have to be internally consistent in that a particular statement that Lord Buddha makes in one place cannot be contradicted by another statement that appears in some other context. So we have to be able to examine it in that way. So in brief then, these statements that are made by Lord Buddha about extremely obscure objects have to be evaluated by these three standards or criteria. They cannot be contradicted by sense knowledge we gain through our senses. They cannot be contradicted by knowledge that we gain through inference, and then they cannot be contradicted by other scriptural statements which are worthy of belief. So that's the basic framework of this. And then how then do we establish the authority or reliability of the Buddha as a speaker? Then that's done by examining all of his other statements about things that we can determine through perception and through inference. So if we are able to establish that everything that he says that is that can be evaluated through perception and inference, if that all of that works and is coherent, then we can accept the authority of that speaker, in this case the Buddha, as being authoritative for other subjects which we don't have access to directly through sense perception and inference. So that's the basic framework of this. Now, in Master Dharmakirti, Dignaga and Dharmakirti's text, they take the Lord Buddha's statements on the Four Noble Truths as being the primary thing that we evaluate, and these things, the Four Noble Truths, can be established based on sense knowledge and inference. The truth of those can be established in that way, and therefore we can use that as evidence to support our belief and trust in his statements about other things which we don't have direct access to. For example, Lord Buddha said that out of generosity one will gain wealth. Out of ethical conduct, one will gain, out of ethical conduct, one will achieve happiness. So the causality between an act of generosity and the wealth that one experiences in a subsequent life, and the causality between an act of ethical conduct and the happiness that one experiences in another life, these cannot be established either through perception or inference. It's not, in a sort of vague general way, one can establish these things, but one cannot establish that in any particular, in any specific case. So, therefore, the only way we can validate or know whether those statements are reliable is through examining the statements of the speaker on things that can be evaluated through perception and inference. And so that's the way it's done in generally the basic presentation of this in the works of Master Dignaga and Dharmakirti. Here, in this system of Madhyamaka, then instead we take Lord Buddha's statements on the absence of intrinsic existence and dependent origination, the two, each entailing the other. That basic truth or fact, which is something that can be established through inference. Since the Buddha teaches dependent origination and emptiness correctly, accurately, therefore we can rely on Lord Buddha's statements for extremely obscure, more obscure topics as something that's reliable.
Oh yeah, that did say. 他先去担保，担当就担保你，先去担保，先去担保，担当就担保你。看个几点的东家，天天先了论把你，看他天天做天他，运动心都有六个球，那其中有担保看个，俺那就是几点的，俺那。你是几天的军队让别人这当，别人这边那把让把春节讲，俺这同行搞我听你，啊，看看几天的同家是啊，几天让别人那这讲同行搞我听你，这边那了，啊，连着了说话，这边那了，西边那两百一百，看啥看大，第一结束找我太大，是其中有点把这个结束找我太大，俺这当真很简单。 라시지 주와 쯤바 아니 나도 주와 쯤에 쯤바 렌제다 아니 나도 주와 쯤에 쯤바 군다 투미 샤완도 줄왜 신도 유랑보 아니 리와 주와 나도 주와 찐디 아니 유랑도 리와 주와 나 레서 대바 남지 로비 덤바 빠네 양다비 덤바라 태진 그와 차오 세 간다 제저 견조다 신도 유를 리와 주를 세대 다도 심바
Then next shows a exposition that why the teachers of other systems outside of Lord Buddha are fallacious. They are false in their, though they appear like real teachers, they're not. So here, this is given in verse 281, and. In the last bit, there's also at the last line, it says, in this context, objects can be understood through the presentation of four kinds of valid cognition. In the Madhyamaka system, in this system here, there's, in addition to the three that we've enumerated, there's also another form of valid cognition, and she explains that in the note 9. So here, 281, verse 281, it says that those who find it hard to see this world are ignorant of others. Those who follow them will be misled for a very long time. So here the teachers of outsiders, it says literally, she says non-Buddhist teachers or outsiders, teachers of the traditions that are outside of Buddhism, who have difficulty in discerning even the way course, cause, and effect operate in relation to the physical environment and the inhabitants of this world, are ignorant regarding other subtle matters. And so people who follow them will thus come under the influence of the innate and intellectually formed attitudes. Here, innate and intellectually formed attitudes. This, and it says, which must be given up. The thing to be given up here, particularly, is the misapprehension of the self, or misapprehension of things as being real, and that has misapprehension of the self in particular has both the innate form of it, which occurs naturally without necessarily engaging in philosophical analysis, and then intellectually formed or imagined by philosophy. These ideas of that form a basis for misapprehension of the self have to be given up, and they will be misled for a very long time. Those interested in their own good should leave false teachers. They should trust and value the true one.
Oh yeah. 他提前了，那路几天新的到把搞完的了，俺前面干了，是吧？我把你的这边举当是小，当俺前，大边举的当你这边也没当，俺那条管的两把这个，他当你的这边举的了，让什么钱？他把队长开始目的一些是这边军战。当把你的这边看上回说话，希望能这边军战，他听到了谈不得了，他把对比对下影响，然后对比结束马上嘛，目的为对比结束之后军战开始的是呢，目的为结束之后军战，两岸的话让着抗，天天心都掐嘎切，这边来信谈判呢，没人一着这么硬气。第一开始说的是，姐姐他把对把他，他把托板对把给，他把团员对把对他，目的结束着先呐，姐姐军战看个目的结束着先呐，刚说的，当把你去前年把它记不起来，是记不起来，你咋给微信你去送我汤？我怎么准备吃嘛汤呢？是我怎么准备吃嘛的呢？两个人对吧？让你提重建都找我抗议吧，他心都搞我切的是，两个人对吧？让着个天天心都掐个切是。
So next comes showing how it is difficult to understand the meaning of the way things are, how difficult it is to understand reality, the meaning of the way things actually are. That has multiple subdivisions. The reason people are terrified of emptiness and multiple further subdivisions that will come later. This reason for fear or terror about emptiness has subdivisions as well. The first is that even though some people, even if they desire liberation, they follow the Tirthakas, non-Buddhist Indian masters. And why is it that they do that? The reason that, and so that's the first subject that's given here. First, even though some people desire liberation, they follow the Tirthaka teachers. Why is that? What's the reason for that? And that's given in verse 282. Question, why do those who seek liberation follow the Tirthakas? And answer, because they are afraid to listen to teachings on emptiness. It is as follows. The unwise take no delight in letting their mind follow a guide who has done that which is most difficult, attained nirvana. And so then the example or the explanation of this, to be taken care of by a spiritual friend, a virtuous friend, and to go to the city of nirvana, having rid oneself of the stains of misconceiving things as being real, is very difficult. The one with great compassion who did what was difficult to do has come to guide them. Unwise persons take no delight in letting their minds follow this guide because they fear emptiness.
Oh yeah. 아니 차가위 잡아 장가기 차가와게 아니 잡아 잡게 아니 투지천봉아위 아니 저와 잼비 레신도왕 레신아 교 담바니 교 담바니 마임바 교 담바 마임바 텐더위 아니 교 담바 마임바 담바티 치신도 아니 이조와 조 마인데 세레 잼비 레신 담바니 마인 이조 조 마인 세요 치신도 이조와 조 마인데 아니 동반이라 잡으셔
So again, the one with great compassion who did that which is difficult to do has come to guide them. Unwise people take no delight in letting their minds follow this guide because they fear emptiness. And that's given in the latter part of that verse, or the whole verse as a whole actually says the same thing, that they're terrified of emptiness.
Oh yeah. That didn't that 동반이라 잡에 가사 등을 송화되라 마동 잡아 미좀데 토나 남고 대도주 대난에와 중세지 실을 잡아 차 요 가시 안에 동반이라 잡아 주세나 아니 그 강양 마동이 바람 질러 쏘와 바질러 쏘와 렌저의 년양 안에 잡아 미좀지 그 강양 마동이 실을스는 마동 잡아 미좀지 미좀데 어디 특성 공배 리베 동반이 무슨도 토나 나바군도 잡아서 도와 주대 동반이라 특성지 전에 아니 담보 특성지 뭐 되네 삼중 공중 림바 신도 그 동영 무슨도 토나 나바군도 잡아서 도와 주대 아니 주대 동반이라 잡아가 주 당선다 차위치로 토나는 그 대도 주루 윤선 대나 아니 내가 동반이지 전 중세 시에 가사되라 동반이지 된 윤선 대나 내가 동반이지 전 중세 시에 가사되라 잡아 중화 잡아 차오 세가라 대나 내가 중세 시에라 잡아 차
So then, so the question is given, and the subject here is that identification of the person who is terrified of emptiness. Question is who is terrified? Who is afraid? Answer: when it is not seen, fear does not begin. When seen, it stops completely. Thus, one can say with certainty, those who know a little are afraid. People like cowherds who see neither virtues nor faults in it can hear about emptiness 100 times without beginning to feel afraid, because they do not regard it as either beneficial or harmful. When one perceives or sees emptiness directly through a gradual process of hearing about it, and meditating, fear stops completely, because one is free from the misconception of the self, which are the misapprehension of the self, which are the cause of fear. Thus, one can say with certainty that fear arises in people who have only a little knowledge of emptiness.
Oh yeah, that is better lah. Ani, lambo che nyewa la, nyewa la kemba na, ani leba lawa de, ani misi batang. Lambo che nyewa la kemba na, shamba na, ani leba lawa de misi sing. Sindu mamba yang misi la.
It's like the following analogy. A well-trained person is not afraid to mount a mad elephant or a crazed elephant, nor is an extremely stupid person. Yet someone who knows just a little about the dangers and benefits of it is terrified. We'll stop there.
Saji Pagi